Alright, YouTube, as promised, I'm going to talk about occult synchronicity as it overlaps with some of the memetic material, really, that's beloved of 4chan, specifically politically incorrect, but it has spread elsewhere. It's now in mainstream use. Hillary Clinton has essentially, single-handedly, with her alt-right speech and her deplorables comments, and now posting on her own friggin' website, oh, Pepe the Frog's like, Nazi or something. She's popularizing what would have been largely an unnoticed underground memetic movement that is intrinsically occult in nature. It's not just lamestream sort of humor. It's taken on a meaning that goes well beyond that. I think her campaign is aware of this. If she has any spiritual knowledge at all, she understands that these things do work on a psychological level at least, even if she's completely secular. If she has any understanding whatsoever at all of what occultism actually means. Now, I'm going to reveal that to people here, because I think most often people still, when they hear occultism or whatever, they think of like broomsticks and black cats, and that's just not the case. It's hidden knowledge, or not necessarily deliberately hidden knowledge, like a person has hidden it in a book somewhere, in some tomb or catacomb. Hidden in the sense that the average person using their normal faculties wouldn't understand what the hell you're talking about. Veiled messages, cryptography, in a way. It all really fits in. The deliberate veiling of information is most common within the occult. So you may have noticed, of course, that there is a song by a band called Pepe from the mid-1980s that has a picture of a frog on the album. That's number one. It's like Spanish, I guess, Italo disco. It's like typical 80s, high-energy music. It's actually pretty listenable. I put the instrumental in the description. There are a couple of other versions. There's the extended version, the like regular version, then there's the instrumental. I think the instrumental's better. I don't even know what the lyrics are about because I'm not fluent in like Spanish or Italian or whatever it is. But then it's called like Magic Song, which is funny, because it's, there's another occult reference. The length of the song is in trips. It's 555. By the way, this corresponds with Gebura, whose additional number within Gematria, if you number the actual Hebraic lettering, deals with fear, deals with young male like warriors, sort of a stereotype / archetype of the alt-right, or the crowd that typically uses memetics. The lion, which is really funny because, of course, Trump, the people who most strongly support Trump and were kind of talking about forming some sort of offshoot, not militia group, but just sort of a group to protect Trump's fans at rallies, had like a lion on there, and Trump's face interposed on a lion and stuff like that. And this is also similar for Assad, who has, I guess, probably less of a deserving cult of personality revolving around him. He's just a dictator. I may support Assad's forces in Syria, but only because he's better than ISIS, better than the FSA, which is basically, Taliban or Mujahideen 2.0. But let's get off of that. And then there's like the way they have assistant artist abbreviated. It looks like ass art, and it reminded me immediately of p.e.p.e. Honestly, again, there are so many points of overlap here. The frog, references to magic, trips is the length, and so forth, associated with this song. Kind of goes a little bit beyond mundane coincidence now, doesn't it? Especially when the band's or artist name is Pepe itself. It kind of defies explanation. By the way, the I believe single version was uploaded in 2009, so it completely predates Smug Pepe. Where that's back in like, primordial Sad Frog days or even before that. So there's no chance that this was like posted as a joke to like a fake band or something. It is real. It is from the 80s. The other point of synchronicity here, music-wise, sonic occultism happening to be basically my specialty, is Man in Grey by Rational Youth from, I believe, 1984. Now, this song, back when I first discovered the synchronicity here, nobody wanted to hear about it because most of 4chan and Reddit and all of these other sort of sites where people congregate to talk about such things, they weren't interested in memetics beyond simply, oh, well, this is a funny meme, but they weren't applying it in an occult manner. They hadn't risen up by the tens of thousands to declare sort of a veneration of an Egyptian pagan deity from 2,000 years ago or anything like that, so nobody really cared at the time. A couple people thought it was kind of odd. Everyone sort of shrugged it off. Listen to the lyrics, though. Link in the description to A Man in Gray. Listen to the lyrics and see some of the references there. It talks about being anonymous, declares my name is Legion, and so forth. Talks about being a rat in the cellar of powers and thrones, and so forth. It really almost is like an anthem of hacktivism or something like that. Now, I know that the term anonymous gets a bad rap, but you have to realize, if you're like alt-right or whatever, like anonymous posting in the more pure sense, and you're not like, oh, my name is anonymous, we are Legion, we don't forget, we don't forgive, and blah, 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 and, you know, wearing like a little paper cutout fake Guy Fawkes mask or something. If you're more of a purist, you have to understand that the media is largely what is declaring anonymous so-called to be a bunch of far left-wing like Bernie Sanders fans. And I will point this out, as far as occult activism goes, why can't they fight for what they believe in for the same reason? I mean, they're fighting for the same purpose. They're using different methods. They have a different overall ideology, but the purpose is the same. It's accountability and so forth. I may not agree with that methodology, but they are attempting to do basically the same thing. They want reform. They look at the world around us. It's boring, it's broken, it's corrupt. All of our so-called leaders and representatives are corrupt. They don't represent anyone but themselves. Everything's all sorts of fucked up. People have turned to the occult because they've become aware of the fact, and not a belief, but an awareness, a gnosis, of the fact that it works. This goes beyond the realm of coincidence in both of these cases, and this happens elsewhere as well. These aren't the only occult synchronicities. There was, interestingly, from the 80s again, and I have to believe all these things are tied in because this came before either this Pepe song or Rational Youth. I think it was before Rational Youth even formed. I think that was in 83. Back in, I believe, 1982, when talking to Tom Metzger, which is, there's another kind of point of overlap if you're talking about white nationalism or the alternative right in the sense of politics within the United States and sort of memetics. The memetics of the era wasn't on the internet, of course. It was on like late night talk shows and stuff like that, or public access interviews. Nicholas Schreck, who I am familiar with, singer of Radio Werewolf, now Kingdom of Heaven, which is also a good band. You should check their work out. Was an occultist, is an occultist, now follows a more Eastern path. He and his wife, Xena, daughter of Anton LaVey, former, priestess within the Church of Satan, now follows a Typhonian and Buddhist path, Setian path, so to speak, but not in the Temple of Set. They were occultists. Now, my own synchronicity, of course, was I saw the Radio Werewolf Fenris as a child, glowing in my window. And these songs even seemed vaguely familiar for some reason when I first heard them. Now, there's no way that I could have possibly heard them when I was a kid. We're talking the underground of underground music at the time, in a household that didn't even at the time have cable TV. So, I was watching VHSs of Disney movies and stuff. He spoke of, not on this occasion alone, but on other occasions, the Clad Legion. Now, the Clad Legion was never clearly defined as to what it was. It is my belief that we're seeing it rise up now. We're seeing the fusion of the more paganistic and occult elements, the Clad literally, using black magic, using the sinister path. We're seeing it fuse with sonic occultism. We're seeing it fuse with memetics. We're seeing it fuse with politics. And regardless of the actual ideology of the practitioners, because some lean left, some lean right, doesn't really matter. They're all essentially fighting for the same goal. They look at the world, they see it's corrupt, it's fucked up, it's stupid. Every political party is beginning to resemble every other political party. They're all full of crap. We all know this. And they're fighting for various reform movements, but they're all using basically the same ideology. The transference of instant information on the internet is very similar to the transference of information by sound, by music, like at a concert or something. You put something online, it's instantly available to thousands or millions of people. It's far closer to being instant than it was in the television age. The Clad Legion, then, is this horde of perhaps millions or tens of millions of usually male, usually younger individuals who are now dabbling in or actively involved in the occult. People are becoming aware of the fact that it exists. It starts as a belief. They're like, oh, well, maybe it's possible, a more agnostic statement. Then they say, well, yeah, I think it is happening. Look at all these so-called coincidences. I can't reconcile them mentally. And they feel at first like they're being driven insane or something. And they shake their heads. They're like, well, this, is beyond the realm of explanation. This is just crazy. And then they come to the realization that it's true. Now, it's also decentralized. Here's where the Legion aspect comes in, not in the sense only of, well, Anonymous is Legion, shit post on the internet and rig polls or something like that, but in a deeper sense. Legion is a conglomerate. When we think of the biblical reference of Legion, what are we talking about? We're not thinking of one simple demon that's just really powerful. We're thinking of a whole conglomerate of demons gathered in one place, and this is the archetype of Legion. Legion is a collective effort that is driving something insane. It's causing it to break down because it's not finely directed. Often within occultism, there's an attempt to strictly control everything. With the sort of mimetic and Kek worship stuff, a million different people are digging around online. They randomly find something like the Pepe song or Man in Gray or something like that. They fling rituals around. Sometimes they don't even realize that they're conducting them. And it all fits in with not only Kek worship, it happened with Ebola-chan. With Ebola-chan, the same thing happened. There are half a dozen different styles of magic on any given thread about it on 4chan at the height of the Ebola scare. You had somebody making like a talisman, you had another person using like a ceremonial altar and like Mathers style, DeLorean style magic, you had another person practicing gematria, you had another person making a blood sacrifice, you had all sorts of stuff. It was a fusion of occultism. It's not one purist path. It's a democratized, almost anarchic version of occultism. And that's what was foretold way back at the dawn of the 1980s. And then all of these songs, which really are heralds to people now, 30 years later or more, really those are sort of the sonic occultism behind it. And the people making the music didn't even realize it because they can't see the occult around them. They don't see it at play. A lot of people, they don't notice it specifically because they don't want to notice it. They have no interest in it. But here's the real kicker. The real kicker is this. Because the seed of occultism online, in a mimetic sense, was planted, and this was, not recently, this was years ago, more and more and more people became interested in it, even people who before were completely secular. It has now become self-sustaining. It has hit critical mass, and it's beginning to seep into the real secular world. When we have a political candidate now fixated with an almost morbid curiosity on a cartoon frog, simply because it has become known in some circles as a symbol of white supremacy, that's the seeping of the occult into the fabric of reality. And the funny part is, it's actually just an occult symbol. It can be used for any occult purpose that the person happens to have in mind. But they're fixating on the negative aspect of it, and thus they deem it as being deliberately and intrinsically connected with one specific class of individuals, one specific ideology, white nationalism, that they happen to most fear. And there's where Geburah comes in, because that's one of the connotations of the numbering that we see here. Geburah is ruling over Kek. Not in a Jewish sense. I don't believe in like Jewish God, Jewish angels, but the archetype, the symbolism there, behind the use of these so-called divine letters and numbers or systems, is basically a form of high-minded fortune-telling when you think of it. But doesn't it fit in? Look up Geburah and what the different transpositions of these letters within this angel's or Sephira's name actually connote, and you'll see that they all appear to have something to do with our current political race. And it boils down to 555. And so, you go one further, you end up at 666. I find that funny too. Yeah, maybe we're in the end times. Okay, whatever. It doesn't matter to me, because if there's a hell, I'm obviously going to it. Doesn't matter to me. But yeah, Occult Synchronicity is at play here. Check out the links. Look at them, listen to them for yourself. The Pepe song is self-explanatory. With Man in Gray, you're going to have to listen to the lyrics. Because nothing else about it appears to be a synchronicity specifically. And Rational Youth, sort of a Duran Duran-ish style band. They're Canadian. They sound a little bit similar, a little bit more synthy than Duran Duran was. Duran Duran sort of branched off into more of the bubblegum-ish before they turned into like an electronic band, like almost a quasi-techno band in the last 20 years, which is really funny. But Rational Youth was sort of the second-tier counterpart to Duran Duran. I actually like them better. I think they sound better. And it sounds a little bit like the Italo disco behind the Pepe song. So yeah, this is real. It is not a joke. Memetics does have a psychological effect upon the entire human population. These things, when they're spoken of, when Nicholas Schreck speaks of the Black Clad Legion, he's willing it into existence. He's using his iron will. He's using sheer force of personality to cause it to become so. In a roundabout way. It could take years, it could take decades. All that negativity in mainstream culture has been festering for 3 decades. And now it's just gone wild. It's being unleashed through an egregore that's been created by a bunch of people on the internet. Who could have seen that coming? You will see more, I believe, now that Hillary Clinton has explicitly attacked the egregore itself. I believe that her campaign will begin to manifest some problems. Now, we did see today that the forensic pathologist, Bennett Omaru, who went after the NFL based on sort of head trauma-related problems and cognitive problems that happen with NFL players, kind of a controversial figure, I guess, for the NFL fans, is declaring that, oh, well, they should do a toxicology report on Clinton because I think she's being poisoned by Putin and Trump. So you see the groundwork, I think, being laid here. The Democrats are talking about possibly replacing her. You've got a partisan Democrat declaring, oh, yeah, she's been poisoned or something. Do you think they might be laying the groundwork for something here? I think it's possible. I still say it's unlikely, but if it happens, I wouldn't be that surprised because I would just see yet another occult synchronicity. When people go to church and they say, well, Deus Vult, God is great, and they start praying, they're believing in the same kinds of spiritual concepts as the idea of Kek or Pepe being an occult symbol or anything like that. The only difference is that's accepted within the mainstream by over 1 billion people, or a bunch of Islamists or Hindus or something. Whereas this speaks for a conception of reality that is recurrent. Every few decades it cropped up in the Satanic Panic, cropped up in the era of Theosophy and thereafter, cropped up before that in sort of the mid-1800s with some of the birth of sci-fi stuff there, cropped up in the Enlightenment. Satan is guiding us all along. Satan, as would be termed by the Judeo-Christians anyway, not the little red man with the pitchfork that brings you to hell, but a more paganistic figure that's been ever present trying to enlighten mankind. Takes a long time to store up the kind of energy necessary to reveal such things, and with each successive step, man enters a new epoch. Have you noticed that? The more humans there are, the quicker it goes too. This happens with technology as well. There's a reason that things are going exponential right now. We are in basically the dawn of a golden age of mankind, or conversely, depending on our actions and intent, we could be entering the next dark age and could kill most of ourselves off. So keep that in mind when you're practicing the occult. You've got to have a decent intent and hope for a decent outcome as well. That's about all. Peace out.